I used to think humiliation came in whispers. A passive-aggressive comment, a look, silence in the middle of a conversation. But nothing prepared me for what happened that night. Not the way he said it. Not the way everyone watched. And definitely not the way nobody did a damn thing. The gala was supposed to be the biggest night of the year. It was our organization's annual fundraiser, 500 guests. Black tie dress code, champagne towers, velvet drapes, and me, Vanessa Taylor, the invisible hand behind the entire thing. I'd spent months on the campaign. Built every piece of content. Wrote every speech. It was my baby, my work, my reputation. But all that didn't matter the second I walked through the glass doors of the Grand Marlowe Hotel and saw Gregory laughing with the donors. A glass of scotch in his hand and his arm slung casually around Mia's chair. He didn't see me at first. Or maybe he did and didn't care. I stood there in my black satin gown. Heels slightly trembling. My hands clutching the small silver clutch I had borrowed from a friend. I had done my hair. I had even worn the lipstick he used to like, ruby silk. But when his eyes finally met mine, he didn't smile. He raised an eyebrow and muttered, "You wore that?" Someone near him chuckled, a polite, restrained kind of laugh, the kind that's meant to cut without leaving a mark. My stomach twisted. I smiled anyway and walked toward him. "Traffic was brutal," I said softly, trying to smooth the moment over, trying to keep the night from spiraling. He didn't answer, just turned back to his conversation. I stood there for a few awkward seconds before taking a seat at the table, trying not to notice the way his friends barely acknowledged me. 10 minutes into dinner, I realized something was wrong. He wouldn't look at me, wouldn't include me, and when I leaned in to ask about the speaking order, he snapped, "Can you not interrupt?" The table went quiet for a beat. I laughed nervously. "Sorry, just wanted to be sure everything's. You don't need to worry about that." He cut in, "I've got it handled. This isn't social media fluff. Vanessa, it's real work." That stung, but I bit my tongue and nodded. I knew the game. Smile, don't cause a scene, be the good wife. Then came the pasta comment. "You sure you want all that?" he said, glancing at my plate. "That dress is doing enough already." There it was, the first blow. It always started like that, light jabs that no one would call abuse. A laugh, a whisper, a jab disguised as humor. His friend chuckled. I smiled too tightly, cheeks burning, appetite gone. But then he leaned in, eyes locked on mine, and said it loud enough for everyone to hear. "God, you're so ugly when you're upset." The words punched the air out of my lungs. And then, before I could speak, before I could even blink, his hand came down on my face. It wasn't hard, not enough to leave a bruise, but enough to make me freeze. Enough to make the table go quiet. Enough to make the room tilt just slightly as my vision blurred and I tasted blood at the edge of my lip. Nobody gasped. Nobody stood. The waiter, God bless him, looked like he wanted to disappear. He slid the check across the table and turned away. Greg leaned back in his chair and laughed lightly. "She's being dramatic," he said, and the table moved on. I sat there, stunned, fingers grazing my cheek where the sting still burned. I looked around, desperate for some kind of confirmation that I wasn't insane. That this had just happened. That someone, anyone, saw it. But all I got were averted gazes and the quiet clink of forks and knives pretending nothing was wrong. That's when I knew. This wasn't the first time he tried to break me. It was just the first time he made it a public spectacle. I drove home with the city lights streaking past like ghosts I couldn't shake. My hands were clenched so tight on the steering wheel. My knuckles had gone white. The sting on my cheek still lingered. But it was nothing compared to the burn rising in my chest. I wasn't crying. Not yet. I wasn't even sure what I was feeling. Shame. Fury. Disbelief. Maybe all of it. I pulled into our driveway. The porch light casting long shadows across the front lawn. Everything looked the same. Ordinary. Like the world hadn't just shifted under my feet. The door creaked open as I stepped inside. Silence. The kind that used to be peaceful. Now it felt like a tomb. Gregory wasn't home. Of course he wasn't. He was probably still at the gala. Sipping whiskey. Laughing at my expense. Maybe Mia was still by his side. Brushing her perfect hair behind one ear. flashing him that smile, the one he used to say I had. Before he decided I was too much. Or not enough. I kicked off my heels and didn't care where they landed. The hallway mirror caught my reflection. And I stopped, stared. Mascara smudged, lipstick smeared, a faint red imprint on my cheek. I didn't look like me. I looked like someone who'd forgotten who she was. Look at you, I whispered. Just look. I poured a glass of wine, cheap, bitter, and all I could stomach. The first sip burned, the second numbed. I sat at the kitchen table in the same chair where I used to plan birthday parties and holiday dinners and weekly meal preps he never noticed. And I thought about the woman I'd become. Not the one I wanted to be. The truth was, this didn't start tonight. That slap wasn't the beginning. It was the punctuation mark at the end of a sentence I had been writing in silence for years. A slow erosion of self. Dressed up as compromise. All the little things I let slide. All the moments I told myself, he's just tired, or, he didn't mean it, or, it's not that bad. But it was. The first time was when he joked that I didn't understand business, and took over our shared projects. Then it was the way he scoffed when I wore something bold. Like confidence made me ungrateful. Eventually, he stopped pretending to listen at all. And I stopped talking. Until tonight, something broke, or maybe something woke up. I reached for my laptop. I didn't know what I was looking for. Not exactly. Maybe I just needed proof that I wasn't crazy. I logged into our shared banking account. The password had been changed. I tried another. No luck. Seriously? I muttered. He used to say he managed the finances because I was too busy with the creative stuff. That I didn't need to stress over numbers. That he was better at it. I let him. God, I let him. I pulled up the email records from our joint business. That, at least, I still had access to. And there it was. Invoices that didn't match. Payouts to vendors I'd never heard of. Transfers labeled, consulting fees, with no contract attached. Repeated payments to a name I didn't recognize, Elise Monroe. Thousands of dollars over the past 6 months. My heart stuttered. Elise. I'd heard that name before. She was one of the junior consultants Gregory brought on during the last campaign. Barely out of grad school. Bright-eyed. Eager. I opened a private browser window and searched the name. Her LinkedIn came up first. Young. Pretty. Marketing intern turned brand strategist. She'd listed our business on her profile as current collaborator. Collaborator. My ass. A cold chill crept up my spine. I wasn't just being insulted in public. I was being erased in private. This wasn't just betrayal. It was calculated. I leaned back in my chair. The wine glass forgotten. My fingers hovered above the keyboard. Then slowly moved to open a new folder on my desktop. I named it, Proof. Screenshots. Every transaction. Every inconsistency. Every invoice. I wasn't just going to cry this time. I was going to collect. I was going to remember who the hell I was before he convinced me I was nothing. Because tonight, something in me shifted. It wasn't grief. It wasn't fear. It was something sharper. Something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. It was resolve. The next morning, the sunlight hit my face before the alarm ever could. But I didn't feel tired. I felt electric. The weight in my chest that had been sitting there for months, maybe years, was starting to lift. I wasn't free yet, not even close, but I had a direction. And after so long drifting in someone else's version of my life, that alone was a small kind of victory. I made coffee, poured it into the chipped mug with the faded, boss lady, text, ironically. A gift from Gregory on our anniversary 2 years ago. Back then, I thought it was encouragement. Now, I knew it was mockery. I sat at my kitchen table and opened the folder labeled, Proof. Dozens of screenshots now lived there. Financial records, payment trails, internal emails, everything I could get my hands on without triggering his suspicion. I started making notes, timelines, connections. This wasn't just a man cheating on his wife. This was corporate fraud, theft, manipulation, and I was going to make him pay for all of it. But I couldn't do it alone. So I made a call. Camille picked up on the second ring. She was my closest friend and, thankfully, also a corporate attorney. We hadn't spoken in a while, not since Gregory made it awkward. He always said she was too opinionated. Translation. She saw through him. Grace? Camille's voice was wary at first. It's early. Are you okay? No, I said, my voice flat. But I will be. There was a pause. Then the tone in her voice shifted, sharp. Alert. Ready. What happened? Everything. And I need your help. I told her everything. The restaurant. The slap. The financial records. Elise Monroe. The transfers. The pattern. The plan. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, there was silence on the line. Then she said, send me everything. Now. I emailed her the entire folder and waited. 15 minutes later, she called me back. Grace, she said slowly, this isn't just emotional betrayal. This is a legal nightmare. If you go public, you could blow up his company. Maybe face retaliation. I didn't flinch. Good. Another pause. Okay, she said. Then we're going to do this right. No mistakes. No drama. Just facts and firepower. She told me to hold off on confrontation. Let her do the legal digging first. Let her set the traps. Meanwhile, I was to keep collecting. So I did. That afternoon, Gregory came home like nothing had happened. He waltzed in with that fake charming smile and a croissant from the overpriced bakery down the street. His version of an apology. Thought you might want a treat, he said, placing it on the table like I was a dog he was trying to tame. I stared at him for a moment. Then smiled sweetly. How thoughtful. He looked relieved. Relaxed. He thought I had folded. He thought wrong. I watched him from across the room. Watched the way he walked around like he still owned everything. Like my silence was a given. Like he hadn't slapped me in public and then stolen from me in private. He didn't notice the way I studied him now, not with fear, but with calculation. Later that night, when he was in the shower, I checked his briefcase. Inside were 2 printed contracts for a consulting firm expansion, both listing Elise Monroe as a strategic partner. He wasn't just sleeping with her. He was building something with her. On the ashes of what he'd stolen from me. And he thought I wouldn't notice. Or worse, wouldn't care. I took photos of everything. Then carefully put the documents back exactly how I found them. Gregory came into the room a few minutes later. A towel wrapped around his waist. Whistling like he hadn't detonated a bomb in our lives. I didn't flinch. I just smiled and said, how was your day? He smiled back. It was almost sad. Almost. That night, as he snored beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My heart wasn't pounding in fear anymore. It was steady, focused. I didn't just want out. I wanted the truth in the open. I wanted him to face the consequences of everything he'd done. Because he hadn't just betrayed a wife. He'd underestimated a woman who once believed silence was safer than standing up. But not anymore. Not me. Not now. 2 days later, Camille called me with a voice like thunder, low, urgent, crackling with energy. I've got something, she said. Actually, I've got everything. She had dug deep into Gregory's business filings, hidden accounts, ghost vendors, even internal emails that someone from his company had anonymously forwarded. Someone who, it turned out, didn't like him very much. I don't know who your guardian angel is, Camille said, but they just handed us a smoking gun. She emailed the files, and when I opened them, I felt my stomach tighten. This wasn't just a side business or a casual misuse of company funds. Gregory had created shell companies, phony partnerships, inflated invoices, even falsified payroll records, all tracing back to Elise Monroe's consulting firm. Elise wasn't a bystander, she was a co-conspirator. It was elegant, in a sick way. He'd been siphoning money from his own investors, funneling it to Elise, then reinvesting it into their new firm, my money. Our resources, stolen right out from under me. Grace, Camille said, this isn't just fraud, it's embezzlement, it's wire fraud, it's conspiracy. If this goes to court, he's looking at prison time. I swallowed hard. And what about me? Well, she said gently, he'll drag your name through the mud. Say you're vengeful, emotional, that you're only doing this because he left you. But if we play it right, if we get ahead of the story, he becomes the villain before he even opens his mouth. I exhaled slowly. Then let's do it. We made a plan. Camille would file the divorce petition and send a very pointed letter to Gregory's company board. Not an accusation, yet. Just questions. Enough to stir panic. Enough to trigger an internal audit. Enough to make him sweat. Meanwhile, I would go silent. No confrontations. No shouting matches. Just quiet, deliberate distance. And so I waited. Gregory noticed. By day 4, he was pacing, snapping at his phone, muttering to himself. He kept checking my expression like I was a grenade and he wasn't sure if the pin was still in. "You've been quiet," he said one night over dinner. I looked up from my plate. "Just thinking." He stared at me. "About what?" I smiled. "About how much I've changed." That night, I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, it began. Camille's letter landed on the desks of the board of Gregory's company. By noon, his phone was ringing nonstop. By 3 p.m., he had left the house. Suit slightly crooked, panic thinly veiled, I sat on the couch with a blanket. Coffee in one hand, laptop in the other. I watched the first article go live that night. Anonymous letter raises questions about exec's financial dealings. The article didn't name names. Not yet. But insiders would know. Elise would know. And Gregory, well, he'd explode. Sure enough. He came home late, face flushed. Tie askew, fists clenched. "You think you're clever?" he hissed as he slammed the door. "You think you can destroy me?" I stood calmly, arms crossed. "Destroy you? Gregory, I haven't even started." His face darkened, the mask finally cracking. "You think people will believe you? That you're some victim? I made you. You were nothing when I met you." The words were meant to sting. But they didn't. Because I finally saw him for what he was. Small. Desperate. Weak. "You didn't make me," I said, voice steady. "You tried to break me. And that's the only thing you'll be remembered for." He lunged toward me then, but stopped short. As if something unseen held him back. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the realization that I wasn't afraid anymore. He turned, grabbed his keys, and stormed out without another word. The silence that followed was the loudest relief I'd ever known. That night, I got another call. It wasn't from Camille. It was Elise Monroe. Her voice was low, tight with panic. "Grace. We need to talk. Please." I didn't know everything. He lied to me too. He used me. I paused, then said, "Then help me end him." There was silence. Then, "Tell me what you need." I smiled, not out of revenge, but resolve, because this wasn't about him anymore. It was about every woman who had ever been silenced. About every lie covered by charm. And about how, this time, the truth had claws. And I was done being quiet. The next morning, I met Elise at a quiet cafe just outside downtown. She looked different, older. Worn. Her usual polished confidence had been stripped away. Replaced by something more raw. Fear, maybe, or shame. We didn't hug. We didn't pretend we were friends. She sat down across from me. Her hands shaking as she pulled out a manila folder. "I kept copies," she said, "at first for protection. But now, I don't know. Maybe because I always knew this would blow up." Inside were dozens of documents, bank transfers, internal memos, Slack messages. Gregory had used her name on accounts without her full consent. He'd backdated invoices, falsified digital signatures. He told me it was just creative accounting. She whispered, staring at her coffee. "Said everyone at that level does it." "Did you believe him?" I asked. She didn't answer. Didn't have to. We left the cafe separately. Camille met me at my place a few hours later. Eyes wide as she flipped through the folder. This is enough to bury him." That night, Camille filed an official complaint with the SEC and submitted a whistleblower report through anonymous legal channels. She said we'd hold off on the public part, wait for the right moment. And that moment came quicker than we expected. The next day, the company froze Gregory's access. 2 board members resigned. An emergency shareholders meeting was scheduled. The wolves were circling. He came home that evening like a man walking into a burning house. Tossed his keys on the counter. Eyes wild. "You did this." He spat. I didn't flinch. "You did this to yourself." He paced, muttering, spiraling. "You don't get it, Grace. This isn't just a divorce. You've ruined my career, my name. You ruined mine a long time ago. I said quietly, I'm just giving it back. His hands curled into fists. And for a moment, I thought he might lash out again. But he didn't. He was too scared, too aware the world was finally watching. He left in silence, and that night, I slept without locking my bedroom door for the first time in years. The fallout was fast. Articles started surfacing, anonymous sources, leaked emails, investors demanding answers. Camille arranged a private interview with a major financial news outlet, off the record. But powerful. A journalist named Lena met me in a discreet location. I told her everything, not just the fraud, the emotional abuse, the financial control, the isolation. She listened, took notes, didn't interrupt. When we finished, she said, "This isn't just a financial story. This is about power and control." Yes, I said, and how easily women lose both when they trust the wrong man. She nodded. It's going to be big. And it was. 3 days later, the article went live. The Wife Who Knew Too Much. How One Woman Exposed a Millionaire's Empire of Lies. It exploded online. Shares, comments, think pieces, people talking not just about Gregory, but about the pattern, the way so many women are written out of their own success stories. Silenced, then blamed when they fight back. Gregory tried to deny it. Of course. Went on TV, called me unstable, said I was trying to profit off a breakup. But this time, no one believed him, because the truth was louder. Elise stepped forward too, publicly. She issued a statement, handed over full cooperation to authorities. Her voice shaking, but her spine straight. Even one of his former male partners went on record. The dam had broken, the day the indictment came down. I was sitting in the same kitchen where I once cried over a credit card Gregory never let me touch. I poured myself a cup of coffee. Let the silence settle. Camille called. It's official, she said. The Department of Justice is moving forward. Mail fraud, wire fraud, securities violations, multiple counts. I nodded slowly, barely breathing. You okay? She asked. Yes, I said. I am. The next morning, I walked into our old office building, not as Gregory's wife, but as a guest speaker. Lena had connected me to a nonprofit that supports women recovering from financial abuse. They'd asked me to speak. I told my story, the slap, the silence, the anger, the fear, and finally, the choice to rise, not with revenge, but with purpose. After the talk, a young woman with tear-filled eyes came up to me. I thought I was crazy. She whispered, but hearing you, I see now I'm not alone. No, I said, you're not. That night, I sat on my balcony. Elise beside me. We didn't talk about Gregory. We didn't have to. We shared wine, laughed, let the quiet be enough. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a survivor. I felt like a woman who had finally taken her life back. And that, I realized, was the greatest revenge of all. This story reminds us that silence can protect abusers, but courage can break the cycle. Grace's journey isn't just about revenge, it's about reclaiming dignity, rediscovering strength, and choosing to live free. If this story moved you, drop a 2 in the comments. If it didn't quite resonate, leave a 7. We want to hear all perspectives. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Unreddit Story for more powerful journeys that speak truth to pain and strength to healing.